Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. I feel like since everyone in Parodies drank all the wine, it's safe to have this now. Cause yeah, after last episode, when I sat down this evening, I was like, no, I'm not going into this next one without Wine Chan. Some of you said I have Whiteboard Coon and Wine Chan. I was like, Wine Chan had to take a break because of the last couple episodes. I'll be honest, after episode 13, I wasn't feeling like having any wine for a while. Which, can you blame me? But man, these last two episodes, 13 and 14... 13 is still one of my favorite episodes. I rewatched it today. I rewatched episodes 13 and 14 today. I rewatched episode 14 because I like pain. So, clearly. But episode 13 is still, it's such a great episode. It's like all the pieces come together. It feels natural. Mr. Browse's speech, bless his heart. Like, it's such a good episode. And then episode 14, it's like Isayama gave us this beautiful piece of writing. And then he was like, oh yeah, by the way, pain. So that's where we're at, right? But I do have a couple notes, not very many. Today, episode 13 aired on Patreon, episode 11 on YouTube. So I'm not that far ahead. I watched episode 14 2 nights ago, and then I took a break last night and was like, I was going to wait longer, but I need to get ready for the recap, so I need to watch this episode. And I'll probably watch episode 16 in a couple days. So maybe I may not get to the comments for episodes 14 and 12 by the time I watch episode 16, but then I'll be taking a little bit of a break to get the recap ready. And so hopefully by the time I record the recap, there will at least be comments for episodes 13 and 15. So that's my plan anyway. And then any other comments that come after the recap, I'll just carry over into part 2, like we've been doing. So... But man, yeah, episode 14 was rough. It was rough. It was a hard time. Not an episode that I feel I'm going to rewatch anytime soon, but I have some comments. So, Rowan said in episode 13 that Levi laments putting belief in Eren, that he told Eren not to regret his decisions, and that he's suddenly realized all of this in the Forest of the Giant Trees, which is, coincidentally, where he gave Eren that speech initially. The tying back around to season 1. This season's been doing it a lot, tying back to season 1, and I'm like, I'm all here for it. I like when stories come full circle, and that was a really good example, so thank you, Rowan. Keith Treason pointed out that the first time that when Reiner was talking about the dinner scene in episode 2 of season 4, when he's talking about the dinner scene, the first person he brought up and described as being a devil was Sasha. And it's so crazy how in the last several episodes, Sasha's death has become such a big impact on this season. I didn't think that Sasha's death, I thought since season 2 that Sasha would die at some point, but I never imagined the impact her death would have had on all these different characters and to the story itself. But I thought that was interesting. The first person Reiner brought up from the cadets was Sasha. And I'm like, okay. It was very, very interesting. And and Gabby went knowing from episode 2 of this season to episode 11, not knowing who in the world Sasha was, just hearing stories about this woman. And then you come to find out that's the woman she killed. You know, I'm very curious to know how Gabby is going to develop after this conversation with Eren and Armin and Mikasa, how Gabby is going to develop as a character. I'm excited about that. I'm terrified for Falco because Falco's not in a good place, but I'm excited to see where Gabby's character goes and what she does now that her world has been shattered, now that she's rebuilding it. Like, what is that going to do to her character? I'm very curious about that. AJN said, I'm a Browsist, not a Jaegerist. I have to go with that. I'm a Browsist. I absolutely love Mr. Browse. He is one of the best characters in this show, and he's just Sasha's dad. He raises horses and speaks the truth. So, what can we do? And that kind of ties to Christopher Peterson saying, he said in his comment, he's like, he's like, we should have gave the founding titan to Mr. Browse. I'm like, man, all our problems would have been solved if we just made Mr. Browse the founding titan. I'm on board with that. Just lock Eren up, give him Mr. Browse. He's old. He's like, what, in his 50s? I'm sure he'll be fine with 13 years left. It's fine. Totally be okay. Nifty little name, and then Beatrice Oliveira and Johanna Quant. Y'all were talking about Mikasa in episode 11, and I do want to bring this up because, God, I feel bad for Mikasa. I really do. Eren, the thing about the Ackermans is that it's true. Yeah, she does have this blood in her. But I feel like Kenny and Levi complicate that in ways that Eren, I don't know if Eren realizes or is just choosing to ignore because he's telling this lie. And so he just chooses to leave Levi and Kenny's part out of this. But I want to note that nifty little name says that Mikasa has been, that scene where her and Louise have the conversation and she flashes back to when Eren saved her in the cabin. All three of them were talking about that scene and how it reads a little different. Mikasa is re-evaluating that scene and seeing that scene as not the heroic act she once thought. That since Eren has, kind of defected and gone on his own and has been doing these things like killing civilians and children, she's been slowly realizing that, wait, maybe this guy I've been following since I was like 8 or 9, maybe this guy's always been kind of this violent person that seeks violence as an answer, and it's not as heroic as I once framed it, right? It's no longer a heroic scene. It's actually kind of more scary and terrifying, and the terrifying fact of it all is that Eren may have always been this way, and she's just been casually overlooking it. Because that's the thing, when you like somebody, when you like someone, you tend to overlook, when you're in love with someone, you can overlook some aspects of them that maybe aren't the best. And then if you break up with that person or you distance yourself from that person and you start to reevaluate them, you're like, oh yeah, maybe they're not as good as I once saw, right? I've had that happen. So I know what that feels like. And so I can agree with that. And then Beatrice Oliveira talks about the man in the mirror in the OVA. Y'all said that OVA with Mikasa would come back, and I'm assuming it's after episode 14, that it's all going to tie back around. And don't spoil me if it's beyond in future episodes as well, but I definitely see how in episode 14 it can tie back around, because the man in the mirror says that she can't save Eren because he carries death in his body. And you can take that a number of different ways. Is it foreshadowing that Eren's gonna die? Is it foreshadowing that he was meant to die to begin with because of the Titan shifter powers? Was it foreshadowing that just because he was born, he was gonna die eventually? You're born, you live, you die. It's gonna happen. So there's nothing Mikasa can do about that. And that in the OVA it says she has to be strong to return to her world. And I take that as Mikasa, after this episode, that it's Mikasa's body telling her that you need to resist Eren. He's not the host you think he is, and you can't return to yourself unless you distance yourself and get away from him and resist him. And so I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if it's possible. Can Ackermans go against that bond? Is it like the founding Titans vow that you just can't do it? Or what does that mean? Eren doesn't seem to think that she can. And Eren, we don't know how much of it is a lie and how much Eren believes, but the way they talked to her in last episode, it sounds like that her whole identity is tied to this Ackerman blood. And I'm like, but I don't agree with that entirely. And then Johanna Quat said that moment with Louise was Mikasa was starting to see Eren differently in a light because she was remembering that past scene and seeing it differently. And that's when the spark activated and she got the headache, because it was like according to Eren, her old self was trying to counteract with the self that wants to protect Eren. And I'm like, I hate it here. It sucks. It's not a good thing. But yeah, thank you 3 for bringing that back up. And it's just Mikasa seems so lost because she's tied so much of her identity to Eren, and now Eren's completely rejected her and been like, I hate you. And so Mikasa's like, well, what do I do when the person that I care for more than anyone else in the world doesn't want me involved in their life at all? What do I do? And I noticed in the last episode she ditched the scarf. And that's just, that's going to be really heartbreaking to see her without that scarf. But it looked like in the basement she didn't have it on anymore. And maybe that's step 1 to her. And maybe Eren wants her to do that. Maybe Eren's like, you need to break free from this blood of the Ackermans. So in order to do that, you have to distance yourself from me and you have to become your own person. And it's like, that's great that you want to help her break free from this, enslavement because of the Ackerman blood. But God, the way you did it, it's pretty hurtful. And so then going from there, I have just a few more notes. Sacha Purvis noted that Zeke's flashback in episode 11 when he flashes back to the village of Connie's, it's not sepia toned or like grayscale like a flashback. It's in this like green tinge. And I noticed that in the episode, but I thought it was just the animation. I was like, oh, okay. But it makes sense now. Sacha noted that means that should have been a hint that something was off with the flashback with the green tinge, like something was a lie. And I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense because it's the first time we ever really see that green tone. It's the first time we actually see it. And it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, that little lie, that little bit of truth spread in with the lie, like it just caused so much to be taken for granted on parody. It's kind of wild. And then Be Happy noted a few things. Be Happy noted that Yelena brought the wine over. It was noted with the first fleet that came to Marley. So 3 years ago, the wine was brought over that had Zeke's spinal fluid. Like, this has been in the works for years. That's mind-blowing. And also pointed out, I don't want to be spoiled. I know we're getting Zeke flashback in this episode, but they kind of pointed this out, so I might as well just say it because they pointed out in the comment, but I don't want to be spoiled about any plot elements. If I've not mentioned it, then I want to be surprised. But Zeke's power, they noted that it's probably because they're of royal blood, the power to turn people into titans, because Colt noted back in episode 2, and I went back and rewatched episode 2, and it's there, where Colt was talking about, like, oh, you're the greatest beast titan in history, and it's, you know, your powers remind me of the founding titan. And I was like, oh, that could be tied to the fact that he is royalty. I was debating last episode how he could turn people into titans, if it was the beast titan's ability or if it was the fact that he was royalty. And Be Happy was suggesting that it is because they're royalty. And that kind of makes sense with episode 2 as well, because in episode 2, Zeke was lamenting to the Marleyan government that when Colt inherits his powers, he may not be able to fully activate them because Colt's not royalty. So he's not going to be able to turn people into titans. It's like, oh, which is kind of terrifying because that implies that if Historia was a titan, she could possibly turn people into titans. And establishes that maybe Uri had that ability as well. I don't know. This episode here, I'm sure, is going to be a Zeke flashback episode, so I'm hoping we get more information. But that dawned on me when I read Be Happy's comment. I'm like, oh, so does that imply that Uri could have turned people into titans as well if they'd used his spinal fluid? Maybe it has to be. Maybe that's what Yelena was meaning, is that you're going to have a hard time replicating the serum because it has to be from a royal family member that is a titan. And the only one in existence right now that is Zeke. That makes sense. Okay. But those are all my notes. And it only took me 12 minutes. Great. So, yeah, I don't know what to expect. But you know what? I feel like we're going to finally get some answers from Zeke. I've been waiting since season 2 to get background on Zeke. Even before I knew it was Zeke, when we first met the Beast Titan, the first thing I thought after episode 1 of season 2 was, I want to know more about the Beast Titan. And it's been like a slow IV drip of exposition. And this season 3, we got more in part 2. And this season has been like a slow little, the knob's been turned and the trickle has gotten into a little stream. And I want the info now. So I'm sure we won't get everything in this episode. I'm sure Isayama's not going to reveal all of their cards, but I'm hoping we get something. So let's not waste any more time, shall we? Let's just dive in and see what we find out. So we're going to do that here with episode 15 of season 4, Attack on Titan, Soul Salvation. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Okay. Well, we got Zeke backstory. Okay. Wow. That's a plan. I don't like it at all. Oh my god, that's like nihilism. We don't even need to be born. Why? Oh. Ugh. Okay. Wow. So, okay, there's the stakes. Okay. God. We're going to talk about this, but, oh, wow, Zeke. Okay. Zeke is still a problematic person for me. He is, even knowing this. Do I empathize with Zeke? I do. There's several moments in his childhood. Here's the thing that Isayama's writing does. And it's true with Flock. It's true with Zeke. It's all, these characters are products of their environment, and they're all layered and complex. And the really interesting thing that Isayama does, especially with Zeke's character, is that lots of Zeke's actions, they all make sense now, and I get why he's doing the things he's doing. I still don't like them. So when back in a few episodes ago, when Levi was mad at Zeke when he was saying, you don't care about any of my comrades' lives, Zeke's like, oh no, I've saved them. Death is their salvation. I'm like, wait. So, God, okay. Yikes. Euthanization, huh? Sweet. Ugh. That's population control for sure. But it's, I have issues with lots that happen in this episode. For the record, I do like that this episode shows that Grisha was not the shining beacon that the basement and that day present him as. That day in the basement in season 3, they present Grisha in a very positive light. And the crazy thing about it is that Grisha is very, like, Grisha was so obsessed with his mission. There are so many comparisons to Eren in this episode with Grisha. When Grisha has his outbursts and stuff, I was like, oh, no, that's Eren. Okay, all right. But the thing of it is, the thing that complicates it all is that Grisha was flawed. And he did some things he really should not have done, like him lashing out and being so angry and furious in front of Zeke and, like, not being a father. Like, yeah, but here's the thing. Killing him, this whole eugenics thing, this whole euthanization, it's basically like if Grisha had just been turned into a Titan on that wall, if he hadn't been given a second chance and had just been turned into a Titan. That's basically what this eugenics plan is. It's just like, this euthanization is like, we're just going to wipe out any chance of any Titans being born, and that's just the Eldians, and that's just it. That'll solve all of our problems. And I'm like, okay. And that's basically like if they just turned Grisha into a Titan on the wall, he would have died. No more Grisha, no more problems. But because he had a second chance, he went about it a totally different manner. Eren's life is only here because Grisha had him, which Eren seems to not even want to live anymore. Oh my God. But Grisha learned. He learned from his mistakes, right? He learned seemingly from his mistakes, and he treated Eren more like a son than he had Zeke, and he was kinder the second time around. He learned from his mistakes, and because of Marley and all that, it ended up just, it's complicated, but, this plan, okay. But we need to talk about this episode. We just need to talk about it. So Zeke's actions make more sense. They make more sense. I'm still not totally on board with Zeke's character, for reasons that we'll go over in this episode, but it's, wow, okay. All right, lots of things in this episode. It felt like the basement and that day part 2. It felt like this was the reverse, the B side. This was the beast side. This was the B side of that day. So we saw everything from Grisha's perspective, and now we're seeing it from Zeke's perspective. I felt bad for Zeke. I do. His childhood was a mess because he was essentially living a double life. He was trying to appease both his grandparents while appeasing Marley, while appeasing his parents, and the poor kid just didn't even have a childhood. The only parental figure he had that showed him true kindness, I mean, his grandparents did, but they were still, like, indoctrinating him. The only one that really came about it from a nice perspective was Mr. Casaver, who was the Beast Titan. And I like that we get this establishment that the Beast Titan just really isn't good for anything. And I'm like, really? Not good for war at all? But he was playing baseball, so did he not figure out he could, I guess his physique. It's curious that he ended up with the Beast Titan. It's very curious. I wonder if that was just, he wanted it because of research and he just finagled his way into it. I feel like there's something there that we don't know, right? I feel like there's a piece of the puzzle there that we don't know about Casaver. But Zeke was all on board the Casaver train, so, but okay. And he activated that Thundersphere with Levi there, so that's terrifying. That's no good. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm nervous about that. And Levi apparently knows the whole eugenics thing now, the euthanization, he lived through that, I'm sure. I'm sure Levi's not dead. But if whatever happens, I'm like, why did Zeke do that? Did he think he could run away? What's the deal? Did he think he was just going to blow up? Or did he sense that somebody was near? Okay, so Zeke and Eren have not touched. They've not touched each other because they were afraid of that contact and what could happen. okay, because we've seen that anytime Eren touched Historia, it activated those memories and things like that. But man, so I wondered back at that day if those memories that Eren inherited from Grisha would affect him. They have, in a negative way. Eren's just like, well, damn it, my dad's responsible for a lot of this shit and I don't want to live anymore. I'm like, I'm not on board with it, for the record. I think the euthanization of an entire population of people rather than seek diplomacy is okay, sure, cool. Not something I would do. Personally, not a choice. Personally, not a fan. But okay, now we know the plan. We know we're gonna map this out, but we know their plan at least. It's just the idea of them taking away the free will of millions of people and taking that free will away and just saying, I'm like, when they said that that the founding Titan could change the biology of the Titans, I was like, okay, well, why can't they? I instantly thought of Dragon Ball Z. I thought of when they make a wish for the androids in Dragon Ball Z to turn into humans. The dragon's like, oh, I can't do that. And they're like, well, can you take out the bombs? I guess that's what this is. They're like, oh, can you take out the bombs? And they're like, well, that won't affect them biologically. So yeah, I can take out the bombs. I guess my point is, could the founding Titan take away the Titan powers instead of their ability to have kids? Is that on the table? If the founding Titan can take away their reproductive organs, can they take away the ability for them to become Titans and they just become normal people like anybody else? Is that a possibility? I mean, if you can miraculously do that to millions of people, you think that you'd be able just to take away their power to turn into a Titan. Why not do that? That's where I thought it was headed. I was like, oh, they're going to take away their power to turn into Titans, and then they'll just be normal people like everybody else on the planet. That's what I thought we were going with this. But then when he's like, oh, we'll just take away their power to reproduce, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, but to do that against for two people to decide that for every Eldian, that's so sad. And that's taking away something that's their free will. I'm like, Eren, you say that you hate the sight of people that aren't free and can't make their own choices. You're taking away choices from people. That's not right. I just But okay, we need to break this down. This episode, oh buddy, I feel like I didn't react much in it because I was just sitting there like, really? But okay. From the start, I want to point out that the walls that separate Liberio from the rest of Marley, it looked like Shiganshina. When I first started the episode, I was like, oh, we're in Shiganshina, and I thought we'd flashed back to like Zeke up on the wall about to go rescue Eren, or say he was going to rescue Eren. Everything makes sense now, okay. But no, it was just Grisha and Dinah showing him atop the wall where they live. That's Liberia. And compared to the world, it's like a tiny bird cage. Again, Isayama loves that bird cage metaphor that we're all just trapped within a bird cage and the Titans are just ruling over us. Which I like that symbolism that the Titans themselves are the burden that Eldia faces. Eldia's whole burden is the Titans themselves. And the Titans are keeping them trapped within the bird cage. I get that. But instead of liberating these people, instead of liberating them, all you're doing is just you're committing it's euthanization, but it's essentially genocide. You're just killing all these people, and then you're gonna kill all these people, and then just let them die out, and then what? So I'm like, is their plan to cause the rumbling and destroy the world, and then euthanize the Eldians, and then there'll just be nobody on the planet? Is that the plan? Because that's terrifying. No, not on board of that at all. No. So, okay, we're going to put Zeke and the plan up here. Okay, we're going to put that up in this corner. All right. We're going to have that. And then over here, we're going to talk about Zeke. Just Zeke in general. Okay. And so we're going to just talk about that in the birdcage. So, yeah. He's like, since we can't leave, we have to live here until we die. Mm-hmm. And he says, would you like to leave? And Zeke's like, yeah, I would. And then Grisha's like, and he talks about them wanting to change it. And then we see this guy He's like, oh, we hardly ever get visitors early. And he's instantly nice. He's nice until he sees the armband, right? And then once he sees the armband, that's when and Grisha's looking at him like, don't say anything. And once he sees the armband, he gets mean. He gets mad about it and throws the water on them. And he's like, we had permission to leave the walls. And he's like, it's my job to clean the tower and get rid of trash. So yeah, his mindset instantly changed when he realized who they were. He says, you came in here and defiled it, you devils. Your kind slaughtered and countless lives. Yet here you are pumping out kids. And that whole thing about pumping out kids is what got Zeke in the first place, right? And they tell him to stay in the internment zone. And Grisha looks so much like Eren. I'm glad Zeke pointed it out when he met Eren. He's like, you're looking more and more like our father. Yeah, he looks a lot like Grisha. Or, yeah, when Grisha's mad in that moment, Eren looks a lot like him. So he says, thanks for ruining my day. And he says, remember this well, Zeke. And he did. He's like, this is the outside world. If you don't like it, you've got to change it. And that's the thing. So he says, Zeke, you're going to save everyone. So the idea that Grisha told them that if you don't like something, you have to change it. Okay. And that's exactly what that's what Zeke's wanting to do. But Grisha's plan, so we're going to put Grisha over here, all right? And for the record, when Grisha is angry, he looks a lot, or Eren looks a lot like him. A lot. And their attitudes are similar too. And we'll go back to the table, the scene of the table, but their attitudes are the same as well, similar. Okay? And so if you don't like it, you've got to change it if you don't want to. Now, Grisha's plan was to have Zeke take the founding Titan back. All right? That was the plan. But I don't think they realized the whole thing. Did they realize the thing about the vow? Was that a thing, the vow against war? Did they realize that? I don't think that they had at the moment. I don't think that Grisha was privy to that knowledge. They just thought that Zeke would take back the founding Titan and free Eldia from Marley. Okay? That was the plan. Okay? And then Zeke, God, that moment of childhood when that man told them off for having kids, that really stuck with Zeke. That was like an impacting moment for him. Oh my God. So we cut back to Zeke as a kid, and Zeke relates a bit to Reiner, right? It relates to Reiner in that he's not very good as a soldier. All right? I could see that's how Zeke and Reiner kind of connect to one another, because Zeke is not very good at being a soldier. He's kind of like Reiner. He's very average, which also connects to Eren in that he was average too. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, Zeke was not a very good soldier. He was just average. He was just winging it. And Eren was the same way. But Grisha never saw Eren on the battlefield trying. He only saw Zeke. And God, that scene when he just walks away. Grisha's a little on my shit list this episode, because you see the dark side of Grisha. You very much do. And they're like, we'll choose one. One of them is falling behind. Who's that? And that's Jaeger again. And so, of all the kids fiercely competing to be honorary Marlians, yet he has none of that drive. And you just see, he's like, why did he even come here? And Kasarev, we'll get his name, he's the one that takes an interest in him, because he's kind of average too. He makes a note of that. I'm going to put Kasarev, we'll put him, I'm going to put K right now. He seems like he was pretty average too. He was just in it for the research. He wanted to delve into Titan memories and find out about the Titans. And I'm assuming tell the Marley government, but he told Zeke quite a lot. So I'm sure the Marley government maybe didn't know everything that he learned. Interesting. And here's the thing. We don't know the story about how he became the Beast Titan, because I find it odd that this average guy that is not in war at all, he's just in research, that he somehow became the Beast Titan. I'm like, there seems like there's more to it than that. I don't know. It's curious. It's very curious. I'm not sure. And I'm curious to know why they thought the Beast Titan wasn't very good in war. I'm like, he's huge. He could at least swing his arms around and kill something if you're going to use him in battle. It's odd. But yeah, they talk about how the training was, Zeke, and he says it's really tough. He's like, but I know you can become a warrior. And so yeah, because you have a special power. And most important of all, you're our son. So Dinah says that you have a special power because you're royalty, right? And Grisha is like, most importantly, because you're our son. You're special because you were born into this world, right? Going back to Carla, right? And he says, right. And then they leave him. This is the sad thing. They leave him with the grandparents when they go to their social dance club. So they're having all these restorationists meeting, and they're talking about how Zeke misses him. And he says it's for the wellness of Liberio. Someday I'm sure Zeke will understand why we're doing this. So he's basically just, Grisha saying that we're doing this for the sake of Zeke, and that one day he'll understand. But for the moment, we're just going to drop him off at your house. I do empathize with Zeke, and I feel bad for him because all he wanted was a childhood. Like, that's all Zeke wanted. Zeke never really he didn't have a childhood, right? His parents were always gone, and he was stuck with his grandparents, and they just, were indoctrinating him all night until he could recite the history of how Marley and how Marley's people were subjugated by Eldia. And then once he did that, he was able to go and, have his pie and go to bed. And then all he wanted to do was play catch with somebody, and nobody would give him the time of day except for the Mr. K here, who took him in kind of under his wing and felt sorry for him, right? And so then we have the tragedy of Lago that occurred 1,200 years ago. So I think it's so cool that the book ties back and looks like the season 2 ED. Back when the season 2 ED was playing and everybody was saying that Isayama threw that imagery in that hadn't even appeared in the manga yet, or had just appeared in the manga, and the manga readers were like, oh my god. Like, I can only imagine when this finally came out in the manga and people were like, oh, this was in the ED years ago, So, okay, I want to put down Lago here. So Lago was 1,200 years ago, all right? And I know it's not exactly 1,200 years because this is like 20 years in the past, but y'all know what I mean. So the tragedy of Lago, where it looks like that the Titans came in. And so it says, after Lago was destroyed in a single day, the Titans went on to cause the horrors of Valley and the ravaging of Monty. So Valley and Monty were destroyed, were taken over as well. Okay. Taken over too. All right. This is interesting, though, because when we talk about the euthanization thing, it's going to tie back to Willie, because Willie, I want to bring that up real quick before I forget about it. When Willie was in Declaration of War talking about that he knows what needs to be done, but he doesn't want to die because he has the right to live because he was born into this world. And that sparks Eren in that moment. So you have Willie over here, and Willie is saying that I have the right to live. I have the right to live because I was born, right? That right to live is from me being born. And so I'm like, and that seemed to spark Eren in the moment and make him, he kind of had a reaction to that. And I'm like, if you go through with this plan to euthanize, then no one is going to have the right to live because no one's going to be born. I'm like, I don't like the euthanization plan at all. I don't like it. I think it's awful. I think you're denying people the right to have kids, the right to choose that, to bring life into this world. It's just, we're just going to destroy life and then it's never going to happen again. I'm like, and yeah, as a fundamental thing, then yes, that will stop the Titans. Absolutely. That's the easiest way to do it, right? But the easiest way isn't right. Just isn't always right. Just because it's easy doesn't make it right. And yeah, that is, so I want to map out this. So their plan, and this may change as we go through this episode. I'm just so floored that we finally get something. I'm like, wait, what? So the plan is to euthanize and stop the birth of Eldians. Okay. And then they predict that if we stop the birth of Eldians, then within a few generations, Within a few generations, there will be no more Titans. Yeah, that's true. That's how it's going to work. You're basically, if everybody in this current generation is no longer able to have kids, then from then on, there won't be any more Eldians born. And then eventually the Eldians that are kids will just die out. And in 100 years, there'll be no more Eldians. But essentially, you know what that is? That's Carl Fritz and the wall. That's the wall plan, right? Because Carl Fritz's whole thing, if we go back to Carl Fritz and his whole plan at the beginning of all this that we established from way back, Carl Fritz's whole plan, you know what it was? It was that we'll build a wall and we'll just sit here and then eventually the Titans will eat us. And then there'll be no more. Done. Well, except it didn't exactly work like that, because the one thing Carl Fritz didn't account for, which you think he would have figured this out, is that there were still Eldians over in Marley. So even if the founding Titan and the other people had died, then those Titan shifters would have gone over to the people in Marley or the surrounding countries where there were more Eldians. So it wasn't a very perfect plan. But the concept of it all is the idea that we don't deserve to live. Just drop that. The idea is that we deserve to die. That was Carl Fritz's thing. He says, we deserve to die to atone for our sins. And basically, by staying in these walls until the Titans destroy us, we're atoning for our sins. And we'll just let death come, and that's fine. This is no different. No different. You're trapping people to where there is no future for them. There's no future for them when they were in the walls. There's no future for them. They're just stuck there until they die. And in this case, they can have no children, so there's no future generations. You just are going to sit. I guess they're going to just let them all stay on parity until they die, and then we'll just, that'll be it. But then you think back to Carla and Levi's mother, Kutchel, having a child and loving that child and it being such an integral part of their life, and you're going to just deny that for everyone. Like, there's no more kids, there's nothing like that, no future generations. And on the surface level, yeah, that's a quick fix, but that's not right. That's not right. I'm like, oh God, we're going to get into this. So Marlians in the tens of thousands were killed by Eldia. And what's more, the people who escaped Lago fled into the countryside. And it's so funny to see the grandpa and Grisha recounting the history in different ways to Zeke. And Zeke responds like he's supposed to in each situation. And the mom just looks distraught. She's like, I hate that we have to sit here and do this. And so the Eldian Empire, at daybreak, the Titans rose and attacked. And then Zeke's just like, and yeah, I know a lot of people died. And that look on his face, like Zeke just looks, he's like, I've heard this story before. He's like, I know. But here's the thing, Zeke acts very differently in both scenarios. With his grandfather, he acts very morose, like he's very like, I know a lot of people died, I know. It was really sad. But then he's totally different around his father. And then the grandpa's like, is your father teaching you the actual history? And Zeke lies. And he says Eldians did horrible things to Marlians, so we have to atone for it. He lies, because we see in the next scene that's not the case at all. Mm-hmm. And then the grandfather says, do you want to become a warrior and fight for Marley? And that little side eye that Zeke gives, the answer's no. Zeke does not want to become a warrior and fight for Marley. He really doesn't. He just wants to be a damn kid. But he can't because of the cycle of violence happening. And I'm going to take a picture of that. And he says, yeah, I want to be a warrior. Mm-hmm. And then that's good enough for the grandpa. That's all he needed to hear. He's like, I think it's bedtime. So I'm like, so spending time with his grandparents was just recounting Marleyan history and nodding his head and going along with it. And it wasn't any different with Grisha. It's the irony of all ironies is that Grisha didn't want to be like his father, And he ended up being exactly like his father, just in a different way. It's no wonder Zeke's messed up. I get it. I do. This plan is bonkers. All right. And so then I like that the grandma says, oh, the next time you're here, I'll read you the Cat House book. And Zeke's like, oh, the Cat House book? Yay! I want to read that. That sounds a lot better. He's like, yes, please. He's like, yay! I like that the grandma's like, I'll read you this cute book. And then we have the picture of Faye and Grisha. The little picture of them as a kid. And it's like Zeke understands why his grandpa's like this. His grandpa's so distraught from losing his daughter, his aunt. But, and so then they talk about putting a gun together. Zeke is no good. It all kind of makes sense with his character now, right? Because Zeke puts on a good front. That's the thing. Zeke puts on a front that he knows what he's doing and he's good. But he's winging it just like anybody else. And at the beginning of this series, I was like, oh, Zeke's really powerful. Levi won't have any chance against him. No, Zeke's not a good soldier. He just happens to have the power of a Titan. But Zeke's not a good soldier. Not at all. He's been winging it this whole time. And then I like that McGath is looking down. And McGath is so young there. Like, he's probably in his 20s. And Zeke getting that from... And you could just tell McGath's like, you ain't cut out for this, boy. You need to leave. But then that's when he goes by. And there's a lot of comparisons in this scene to Zeke and Falco in a way. And we see the little kid with the dad playing ball. And that's all Zeke wanted. All Zeke wanted was a childhood. He wanted a father figure. And he ended up getting that father. He ended up calling Mr. K his father figure, not Grisha. Because that's all he wanted, was to be loved by somebody. And then you could see when he goes into Grisha's study, he's like, I finished early today. He's like, oh, good, we'll be able to study more. God, Eren looks like Grisha. Eren looks so much like him. Like, when he turns around and looks at him, he looks so much like Grisha. And there's little nuances that Grisha does that reminds me of Eren a lot. Like, when Grisha, you don't see his eyes, but you see him, like, leaned over the books. Like, Eren being contemplative and serious, it reminds me a lot of Grisha. Like, there's so much of Eren in his father, so much of his father in Eren. It's interesting. But yeah, and then he's like, oh good, we'll be able to study more. And that's not what Zeke wanted to hear. He's like, sure. And then he's like, the tragedy of Lago never happened. And so he's like, the ravaging of Monte and the Horns of Valley are stories made up by Marley too. And Eldians have never had such cruel customs or culture after all. And then Zeke says, the founder Ymir wouldn't want that. It's unthinkable. Zeke knows, he knows how to play the game, right? He knew how to play the system. Even as a kid, he knew how to play the system, and he played it on his father's side and he played it on his grandfather's side. He just knew exactly what to say to make them happy, because that's all he wanted them to be happy with him. And he gets rewarded because his dad's like, you're right, you're catching on, Zeke. And he does the head pats for Zeke, and it's like, that's all Zeke wanted, was he just wanted acknowledgement and love, and he was willing to say anything to get it, right? Oh my God, it's so awful. And then we cut to McGath saying, if you're not serious, get lost. Marley needs people willing to give everything to our motherland. You see like the cadets, the candidates up against the wall, and there's like a lot of them. Oh my God. We sure as hell won't leave a Titan in the hands of someone like you. And that's when he gets sent home. And the other candidates all just kind of leave him behind. Like, there's a girl there and there's some others. They all just kind of leave him behind. And that's when he stumbles across the baseball. Can you toss that back? And it's just him standing back against the wall there. And he tosses the ball, and he's got the throwing arm. And he's kind. You don't see his eyes through the glasses, but he says, you have good aim. And then, and he catches the ball. He's like, I'm sick of throwing off a wall. Do you mind playing for a bit? And it was all to get Zeke on board. Which is funny, because there's a part of me that, he says, one of the Marleyan warriors you're aiming to be. There's a part of me that thinks Mr. K is a sincere person and just genuinely felt bad for Zeke. and wanted to befriend him because he felt maybe he saw some of himself in Zeke. But then there's a part of me that's like, this man's a warrior. He was literally chosen to be a Titan shifter, even if it was just for research, even if it was just, just for research or whatever. He was still chosen to be the warrior. So he's not weak, because they just established that they don't accept weak people. So there is a part of me that feels like Mr. Kasara, we'll get his name in a minute. There is a part of me that feels like there's a little ulterior motive to this, but maybe he was trying to figure out why Zeke wanted to be a Marleyan warrior, like why he kept trying, like what was the deal. I don't know, just something in this episode, something has felt off about Mr. K, and I can't put my finger on it, but I like that he's kind to Zeke and he shows compassion to him, but something's just off. It doesn't feel right. I can't describe it. But he says, though, since my Beast Titan isn't too helpful in war, then I must play catch around here. See, that line, I'm like, he's the Beast Titan, and the Beast Titan's freaking huge and has powerful arms, and he plays baseball, so you would think that this guy would know how to throw, and that would be a weapon he could use as the Beast Titan. You would think that, right? And maybe Zeke's inherited his memories, but Zeke's inherited his memories, so maybe he's figured that out. I don't know. It just, something about him just throws me off. Kassaver, that's what it is. I'm Tom Kassaver. I'll get the right color on here. My name is Tom Kassaver, and I work in research. Okay. And he has him given the love of baseball, the mission. All right, he says, what's your name? And that's when he's like, I'm Zeke Yeager. And you're throwing some heat. You could be a good pitcher. Even though he's throwing high balls. Throwing a lot of high balls, but that's what he wanted to hear. That's all Zeke's ever wanted, was just to get some form of positive reinforcement in his life, right? That's all he's wanted. And as a kid, you get it. You understand why Zeke would react that way. But when he goes home and he says, I'm home, Dad, guess what? Like, he was going to tell him that I met one of the warrior candidates. Like, you could just tell Zeke was going to tell him that. It's like, I met a warrior candidate, Dad. And I love what the show does with the animation here. When he gets home, the lights are off and it's in darkness except for the light in the room that Grisha's in. And that is just instantly is a cold atmosphere. And just the atmosphere in this episode was so well done. It just felt sinister. And you could just tell as a kid what Zeke would be feeling like. And he says, that's not what you told me. What gives, Grice? If Zeke isn't chosen, the plan's finished. And Grisha's desperate. Yeah. And then Grice says, but the owl said they can't influence the decision unless Zeke has decent scores. So they're basically putting it on Zeke, like Zeke's not good enough, and that's why they're not choosing him. And he says, I know, a chance like this comes once in a century. Funny that, because in once in a century, they think everybody's going to be dead, so it won't matter. And says, doesn't Zeke still have a shot, though? And then, yeah, he might, if Zeke steps up. And that's when he notices that Zeke's there. And that shot of them all looking down at him, oh my God. I want to make a note that Colt and Falco look a lot like their Uncle Grice. An awful lot. And I wonder, too, if Zeke, knowing that that's Colt and Grice's nephews, if he knows that Colt and Falco are Grice's nephews, if that plays a part. But again, he thinks they're all going to die, so it doesn't matter, right? And if they become warriors, then they're going to die in 13 years anyway. It won't matter. But, damn. Okay. So there's that. And that look, they're just looking down at Zeke with such disappointment in him. And any kid would be, they'd feel mortified by that, right? And poor Zeke, that shot too, where he's just in the doorway with their, and I want to make a note that anytime Isayama has shown the shadows of people against the ground, well, they look like the big looming titans, right? So we had back at season 3 at the ocean, you saw the shadow of Eren and Armin against the ground, and it looked like a titan. Here, you see the shadows of 3 titanic figures against Zeke, and Zeke is just looming in that shadow. Like he's just in the shadow of this greatness and this light above him, and he's not able to meet up to the standards. It's such a sad shot. I feel for Zeke. I do. I feel badly for him. He says, I'm sorry. And then Grisha says, I know you can do it. You're our son after all. Like, it's just Grisha, the sins of the father, right? That he kept saying, you're our son. Like, you can't fail because I'm great. Dinah's special, so you have to be too. There's no way you can't be. So Grisha was just pushing that onto Zeke over and over again. And it's like, if you kept pushing that on, I joked several episodes ago, I'm like, well, why doesn't Zeke want to have kids? Well, Zeke doesn't want to have kids at all because he thinks that's the problem, is that Eldians are being born. He thinks that's the problem. And you get where Zeke is coming from, because anybody that went through a shitty childhood probably is like, well, if I just never been born, or if we just didn't exist, the problem would be solved. But that's not everyone's experience. And I'll talk about this. But yeah, but I get why Zeke is like, damn, like he's had some horrible parenting and he's just had all this thrust upon him. So no wonder he just wants to give up on the whole concept of it, right? You're our son after all. And then Magath's like, I said Marley has no need for you, so why are you here? Magath's like, why are you wasting your time? And I want to make note that there's probably a little bit of Magath that's trying to help Zeke, because Magath knows that these warrior candidates are eventually, if they become warriors, they're going to die. They're going to live for 13 years and then die. And so he's probably trying to tell Zeke, like, hey, kid, go back home. You can at least have a decent life, maybe, if you just go back home. Like, stop trying to kill yourself. And Zeke says, to show my loyalty to Marley and atone for Eldia's sins. Okay, let me in open training, please. And then all these kids are running with the packs and the guns and everything. And Grisha and Dinah are watching Zeke just struggle. And he's just struggling. He can barely do it. And that look that Grisha just turns around and leaves. And Dinah looks like she's trying to, like, get him to come back. And he just looks so distraught. And then they're like, what are you doing, Jaeger? Run, boy, run. And Magath's yelling at him. And Kassaver feels sorry for him. He's like, damn. And then this next scene, Grisha goes down several notches on the tier because of this scene. The whole, damn it, it's bullshit. Because, yeah, he was so mad that Zeke didn't meet up to his standards. And then Dinah's like, he's trying his best. And they're like, he'll never be a warrior like this. And him just yelling. And Zeke just under the blanket in his PJs. Yep. So I want to point out, just for the record, that it has dawned on me, and I've told y'all in the last couple episodes that I've had shipper goggles on for Eren Historia. Seeing Grisha in this episode and seeing his anger and kind of, he's not openly violent. He never strikes Zeke. He's never openly violent with Zeke. He's just verbally violent. But seeing this anger that Grisha has in this episode, and then seeing how Eren is kind of similar to Grisha, I'm like, maybe Eren doesn't need to have kids. No, because maybe not. But again, we don't know. Eren is not Grisha. Eren is not his father's son, right? Well, Eren is his father's son, but he's not his father, right? So I don't know. It just dawned on me in that moment. I was like, maybe not. But that, just because Zeke doesn't think he should have been born, and Eren doesn't think he should have been born, doesn't mean that everyone else in Eldia agrees with that. I don't think Armin thinks that. I don't think Mikasa thinks that. So I don't think Levi thinks that. So it kind of ties back to what Kenny was saying. Kenny was like, I wouldn't want to bring a kid into this world. But here's the thing too with that. I kept thinking about Kenny in this episode, because Kenny makes the comment. Kenny says that he's not meant to be a father and that he didn't want to bring a kid into this world. He didn't want to do it. So he didn't want a kid to suffer and be brought into this world. So Kenny did acknowledge that. But here's the thing. When he got Levi, he let Levi live. If he thought that Levi being born meant he deserved a chance, right? He deserved a fighting chance, right? Because if Kenny truly believed in the same kind of euthanization thing that like Zeke and Eren are putting out, then as soon as he found Levi after Kutchel died, he would have killed him. He would have been like, this world, you don't need to grow up in this world. It's awful. You don't need to suffer like the rest of us. And he would have killed Levi. But he didn't do it, right? Because he loved him. He recognized that he was his sister's child. And he's like, I can't do that. I mean, Kenny was ready to kill a kid. Kenny was going to kill Historia back in the episode. So it's not the fact that Kenny was unable to kill a child. He was going to kill Historia. Absolutely. But he didn't kill Levi, right? And then it ties to Carla. And Carla's whole thing is like, you're special because you're born into this world. So anytime, I said this last couple episodes, a few episodes ago, but anytime there's been like a baby shown in this show, it's been like almost revered. Like it's a sign like life is precious. In the midst of all this death and destruction, there is still life and it finds a way. And I don't like this plan at all because I'm like, you're taking away life. You're stopping it. You're playing God. You know, it's not right. So, but we'll talk more about that. I'm just like, I'm creeped out by this euthanization plan, if you can't tell. So yeah, so you were a mess the other day, and so Kasavr says you were a mess the other day, and Zeke's like, it's not funny. They're just having me run errands now. It's over for me. And he throws the ball back. And he has a glove now, too. So Kasavr gave him the glove. And he's like, it seemed to me that you never wanted to be a warrior. And he says, I have to become one, yet I totally failed. So Kasavr is still trying to feel him out. He's still trying to feel out, why are you here, then? Why are you doing this? What's the point? And Kasavr says, well, it's no big deal. It's stupid for you to become a warrior. He's like, you shouldn't do it. It's dumb to shorten your life for Marley and get sent to fight other nations. So Kasavr's like, it sounds like a great idea at the time, but all you're doing is just limiting your life to 13 years and just going and fighting other people. Like, it's not really all that it's cracked up to be. And Zeke, and I like that Zeke looks around like to see if anybody's listening. He's looking around to see if anybody's listening to them. And we don't see it. And he says, why did you become a warrior? And he says, to learn the secret of the Titans. I'm a researcher, you know. And so Kasavr, it's interesting. He's like, everything started when the founder Ymir touched something. So Ymir touched something. Okay. So we're going to establish over here that Ymir, touched something. Whatever that is. So I do like that Kasavr does not frame what was touched as either good or bad. He doesn't frame it as Ymir made a contract with the devil, which is what Marley has taught its people. He doesn't frame it as Ymir was a god. He just frames it as the founder Ymir touched something. We don't know what that something is yet. I'm sure we'll find out by the end of the series, but touched something, okay? But I wanted to know the truth of it all. Enough to shorten my life and look through the Titan memories. Okay. I want to go back to his flashback when his wife dies, though. All right. That's why I'm pretty much useless when it comes to war. But again, I think there's something with Kasavr that, again, we've gone back to this whole phrase, to tell a good lie, you have to put the truth in with it. And I think that Kasavr there's truth in what Kasavr's saying, but I'm also like, I feel like Kasavr has just been this whole time searching Zeke for information, right? Because it's awfully convenient that as soon as that Zeke ends up confiding in him and tells him that we find out they've been looking for the restorationists, and Zeke, he's like, this kid that sucks as being a soldier won't go away. He keeps on trying. Why would he do that? And so I feel like there's a part of me that wants to believe that Kasavr is genuine in all this, but there's another part of me that thinks Kasavr was just feeling Zeke out for information. And again, Zeke inherited his memories, so he probably knows the answer to those questions, right? And I'm assuming because Zeke hasn't told us otherwise that he was genuine, but it's just kind of suspicious. It's very suspicious. It just seems to me. Compared to the mystery of the Titans, hatred and war seems so trivial. I do like that line, though. I do like that line that he says that the mystery of the Titans, and I agree, the mystery of the Titans trumps over, it's better than hatred and war. Okay. It makes it seem trivial. And I would agree with that. The best parts of the first couple seasons was finding out the mystery. I was like, okay, we get these battles and stuff. I want to learn more about the Titans. And I feel like that's this show, is that we're like on the edge of our seats being like, yes, tell us these mysteries of the Titans, please. There's war and destruction. We know what that's like in real life. We want to know about these mythical Titans. And so I do like that line a lot. And so maybe he is genuine. I don't know. The show has conditioned me to think that lots of people are double agents. So I'm naturally suspicious. And he's like, that's why you and I aren't interested in their war games. But here's the thing. Zeke ends up becoming involved in the war games. He's in an episode titled War Games. He ends up killing lots of people. And it seems like this Cassava person was not someone that would go off to war and kill people. So it's curious, right? It's interesting. Okay. And so we're just two decent people, a real rarity in this world. And so then Zeke seems happy with that. Zeke's like, okay, yeah, we're just decent people. We're just rare. We're rare in this world. We're two decent people. And then Zeke says to himself, this is for the best, even if I can't leave the zone, as long as I'm alive. Okay. And that's when he overhears. And he kind of gets distracted. He kind of gets slumped by that. He was like, as long as I'm alive. But then he gets stumped by that because he's like, well, what does it mean to be alive if I'm stuck in this bird cage? He's like, is my life just going to be living here and not doing anything? Is that really what it's going to be? And how does my father feel about that? Like, you just see that Zeke he's just troubled by that, right? And that's when he passes by the room and it says, we finally got a lead. They're the Eldian Restorationists. And Zeke knows what that is. It's a pretty large group. A traitor called the Owl formed it, and we've got a few hunches already. It's just a matter of time till we get solid proof. So they're narrowing in on them. And that's when Zeke, wakes up and he's back home. And Dinah's like, you should eat up. And then he says his stomach hurts. And God, again, that look that Grisha gives him, like young Grisha, Eren looks so much like him. It's really disturbing in this episode. I kept calling Zeke Grisha back at the start of season 4 because I thought Grisha and Zeke looked similar. No, Eren looks so much like his father. It's crazy because back when Zeke first met him, it's weird. Back when Zeke first met Eren in season 3, he commented that Eren looked nothing like their father. He looked more like Carla. But I would argue that since Eren's inherited his father's memories and gotten older, he looks more and more like him. It's weird. Weird. And he's just looking at him. And Zeke thinks that Grisha's going to get mad at him. And he's prepared to, hear the worst. And he's like, Mom and Dad, stop doing dangerous things. And they're both like, excuse me? And he says, if they find out, we'll be sent to paradise. And sent to the island of the devils and made into titans. And then, God, Grisha's like, have you learned nothing I've taught you? And he just looks so awful. He's like, unless someone takes a stand, we'll live pitiful lives in this tiny cage. And that is very much an Eren mentality, right? That whole point there, at that point I was like, God, that sounds like Eren, right? Because Grisha's whole thing is we have to take a stand and we have to fight or we're not free. Okay, that sounds exactly like what Eren's been spouting off this entire season, right? Sounds exactly like it. And then Dinah says the same thing. She's like, that's right. We're fighting for the future of all Eldians, including yours. We're fighting for everybody's future. And Zeke he's like, even if there's a chance that I end up like Aunt Faye. And he thinks of his aunt dying. And Grisha gets mad at that. And he's like, the only reason Faye died is because this world is twisted. He says, we have to fight so nobody else ends up like her. And so again, he says we have to fight to stop deaths like Faye's. But again, the error in that logic is that you're just perpetuating the cycle of violence. And we established back in episodes 11 and 13, mainly in episode 13 with the whole conversation with Niccolo, is that when Gabby and Niccolo were arguing back and forth, Gabby's like, well, your people killed my people, and my people killed your people. And Niccolo's like, it's been happening for 2,000 years. And it's just establishing the idea that the cycle of violence, it just perpetuates itself over and over again, right? So, but within that, Mr. Browse and Uri have been like, there's a chance that despite that violence, if people just give each other a chance and there's understanding, you can't have a miracle happen. You can't have diplomacy and peace. It just takes time and people being willing to do it. So, but again, I want to go back at the end of this and talk about all this, but God. And Zeke's he's like, we have to restore the strength of Eldia and win our rights back. And Zeke just can't take it. Zeke's like, you can tell Zeke doesn't believe it, and he's sad that his father's yelling at him, and he doesn't believe what his father's saying anymore. And he realizes in that moment that his dad and his mom are not going to stop what they're doing. They're just going to keep going. And it goes back to what Grisha told him. He's like, if you don't want the future to be the same, you have to change it. And he makes a decision. He makes a decision to change it. And Zeke, oh my God, him just crying. So, information available for public disclosure. Titan research. Research concerning the unique power of the subjects of Ymir to become Titans. A field of study since the era of the Eldian Empire. It encompasses not only the biology of Titans themselves, but also the ideologies of Eldians who possess the power and how to deal with them. Though researched extensively over many years, the truth of Titans still remains a mystery. So, but Cassaver thinks he knows a lot about this, and it seems like he's not telling Marley everything that he knows, supposedly, right? But he's telling Zeke. Interesting. So, a unique power of the subjects of Ymir. Okay. So they've been doing this Titan research to try to figure out the mystery of the Titans. Okay. And then, again, the airship. The airship. Wow. So it's crazy. You have the airship kind of being symbolic in both of these instances. You had the airship when the owl sat down with Grisha to try to get Grisha to choose. It's funny because you have Grisha getting chosen by the owl, by Kruger, as the airship's passing over to be part of this restorationist. And then as the airship's passing over, you have Zeke being chosen by Cassaver to inherit the Beast Titan. And Cassaver's like, you're kidding me. Your parents are restorationists. You'll all be sent to paradise. And then Zeke's like, yeah. And Cassaver does genuinely seem upset about this. So maybe my doubts on him are completely unfounded. Maybe I was like, Cassaver's being genuine. It just seems kind of shady. But maybe he was genuine about all this. And then Zeke says, thanks for playing catch with me. He says, even when I'm a Titan, I'll remember you. And Cassaver's like, oh, I can't take that. Like this little kid, like Zeke's saying, even when I'm a Titan, I'll remember who you are. And Cassaver's like, damn it, no. And then that's when Zeke gets up to leave and he says goodbye. And Cassaver, he says, report them. He says, it's your only hope. He's like, if you report them to Marley and prove your loyalty, then you and your grandparents might be spared. And Zeke's like, I could never do that. But he says, Zeke, your parents have been terrible. And here's the thing. This is the crazy thing about Zeke and all of this. Eren has gone on the last 2 episodes talking about how Eren is free and can make his own decisions for himself and his own free will, right? And yes, Zeke does turn in his parents. But it's like Zeke has always been told what to do. He had Grisha telling him what to do. He had his grandpa telling him what to do. And then in this case, Cassaver tells him what to do. He's like, report him. He's like, your parents have been terrible to you. Which I will say, yeah, they're not great parents. They kind of sucked at this whole parenting thing and they were using Zeke. Absolutely. But Cassaver saying that they never loved him, oh, that was kind of cruel, right? It says your parents have been terrible to you. They gave up on you and never cared how you felt. And you see the grandparents being sad. They gave up on you, never cared how you felt. I was like, I don't know, right? And he's like, they never loved you. And that's when they cornered them. And I was like, Casaver, I want to think that Casaver is a genuine person and that he cares for Zeke, but for him to tell Zeke that his parents never loved him when, their means were twisted, right? They had twisted means and everything, but that's a bold statement to say that they never loved him. And then he said, Zeke, you've done nothing wrong. Which Zeke's a kid. I do admit, Zeke doesn't deserve all of the pressure that was put on him as a child. Absolutely. Like, the pressure put on Zeke, no kid deserves that. But for this guy to say that his parents never loved him and to just push him to turn them in just so he could keep Zeke around and make him the Beast Titan. And then you kind of get the fact that Casaver wanted to die too, so maybe he was hoping Zeke would come to this conclusion as well. It's interesting. It's very interesting. But yeah, when he watches, and there's a moment where Grisha looks back at Zeke and looks at him, and it's like he's just terrified. And he said, you're a smart kid, a good kid. And he has his hand over his shoulder, and then him holding him. Oh my gosh. And then we see the shadow of the Titan next to him. So it's what Zeke always wanted. He wanted somebody to say that he was a good kid and a smart kid and just cater to everything he wanted to hear. But God, he turned in his parents. And I would say he was influenced by Casaver, definitely, but it's just, that's hard. Oof. And then we see Zeke growing up, and he's like, take it easy on me, Zeke. And the sad thing is, he's like, I threw social for you. And the sad thing is that Zeke grows up and he does get ripped, as we've seen in the last episode. He does get like muscles and everything and gets to be a strong kid. He was a late bloomer. It's like, Eren too, they're all late bloomers, right? But God, he's like, I threw two out. Yeah, he grows up and it's like, time. It takes time, right? That's the thing. Zeke grew up to be a strong person. It just took time. That's like the central message in this whole damn show. But, oh man. And he's like, I'm not that old. And then he's starting to lose himself because of the Titan, his term almost being up. I also like how all the Marleyan, all the warrior candidates, they're wearing like jorts. It's a weird thing, but they're not wearing pants. They're not wearing shorts. It's like the knee length, the cargo shorts that guys wear. It's a funny fashion choice. It's a funny fashion choice. I'm just gonna make fun of it. He says it won't be long till my term is over. And then we see all the candidates. So we see them as little kids. We see Porco. We see Marcel. Bertolt is taller than everyone, even as a tiny kid. We see tiny little Peek. And I like that Peek's leading. And then there's Bertolt. And then in between Marcel and Porco is Reiner. And Reiner has his head down like he's not happy. And then way back in the back is Annie. Annie's keeping her distance. And if you notice, at the very end, they all kind of pass Reiner up, and Reiner and Annie are the last ones. Interesting. So it's not too long ago. He says, I'll be able to release a compilation. And Zeke's like, what about? And he says, the things the founding Titan did to the subjects of Ymir. So that's what he's been researching. Okay. And then Zeke's like, oh, like rewriting their memories? So the founder... So we go back to this whole thing of the founder. So the founder, interestingly enough, the founding Titan has lots of powers, okay? And the rewriting memories is one of them. We knew that. We knew that from Frida and from all that. So that's one of them. And Zeke knows that too, okay? And then he says, not just memories, it can change the anatomy of their bodies. And Zeke is like, wait, what? He says, around 600 years ago, a terrible pandemic devastated the population. So up here we have 600 years ago. So half the time from Lago, we had a pandemic, right? that ravaged the population. It devastated the population. Okay. And then around this time, but all of a sudden the disease just vanished from the Eldian Empire. And you see this like beautiful stained glass, and it's like this light shining down, and you see like a scepter and everything. So the disease just disappeared from the Eldian Empire. Okay. The king at the time used the founding titan to change how their bodies work. So it can change how the bodies work. Okay. So it can basically rid the body of plague. Okay. Okay. I mean, that sounds great. Great. That founding titan 600 years ago was like, all right, we'll just heal up our people. That's all good to go. Sweet. Great. And then that's when Zeke is like, oh, okay. He says, no matter where we go, we subjects of Ymir are like part of the founding titan. Which, yeah, that's the circulatory system in the body. They're all connected together. The subjects of Ymir are like part of the founding titan, right? As they, further the population, it spreads out more and more, but they're all connected together. That's how they're able to turn them into titans, all that good stuff. And Zeke is fascinated by this. And so he says it's scary, right? I mean, it is kind of scary if you think about it, that you and a population could be all connected together, through a certain, a certain birth, like a blood thing, right? And then Zeke says, and that's when he goes back to what that Marleyan told him all those years ago. He's like, can the founding titan make it to where the subjects of Ymir can't bear children? Can he change that? And Kassavar's like, wait, what? If none of us were able to have kids, the Titans would be wiped out in 100 years. Uh-huh. Yep. Then the world wouldn't have to fear or be threatened by Titans anymore. And that kind of, it ties perfectly with Zeke's character. Zeke had such a shitty childhood that he's like, why would any kid want to go through that? Why would we want to bring any life into the world if all they're going to do is go through that, right? So he thinks that the founding titan can stop the reproduction of children. Okay. And then the world wouldn't have to fear the Titans anymore. So the idea is, in all this, that they're going to get the founding titan, right? The founding titan is going to change people's bodies to not bear children. Okay. And then in about 100 years, after that, 100 years, there'll be no more Titans. So, that makes sense kind of with the title of the show. Like the very first episode was To You 2,000 Years in the Future. We established back in season 3 that we were around like 1800 to 1900 years after Ymir had first gained the Titan powers. So if Eren and Zeke go through with this plan and we euthanize all the Titans and we basically like sterilize everybody, then around 2,000 years into the future, there will be no more Titans. Okay. That's what we're saying, right? Oh, God. Okay. This more, if we hadn't been born, we wouldn't have had to suffer. Yeah. And then it just bounces off his glove. And he's like, Mr. Kassavar. He's like, I've never spoken about it, but I had a family once. And so basically Zeke is implying that if we weren't born, then we wouldn't have to suffer. That's what he's implying. And Mr. Kassavar says, in my foolish youth, I removed my armband. And hiding the fact I was an Eldian, I had a wife and child. Okay. My wife was a Marleyan. And I love the visuals of what this episode does with the visuals. It shows the wife, like they're still in the backyard playing catch, but it shows the wife like on the ground in front of him. Like it inserts elements from the episode. He's like, I knew I couldn't hide it forever, but when my wife found out I was an Eldian, and you see like the sheep, you see like the ram on the bookshelf. When my wife found out I was an Eldian, she slit my son's throat and her own. And then it shows the kid and the baseball and her, because they knew what would happen to them. Huh. And okay, if you look in the little wagon, there is a doll that looks like Eren. It looks like Eren with the long brown hair. And then there's a blonde doll that maybe is Historia. And then there's a little blondish doll that's beside it that's maybe Zeke. It's interesting. Okay. But yeah, she slit my son's throat and her own. Me becoming a warrior was merely a grandiose way to commit suicide. So he basically says that he became a warrior candidate to end his life. But he says, for 13 years, I immersed myself in Titan research, met you, and played catch. And so I love that the image of him picking the baseball up off the blood. God, that's such a great visual. Oh my God. I love it. And then, of course, it's a vision, so he doesn't see it. Mm-hmm. And he says, from there, it's been fun. Mm-hmm. And that ties back, oh my God, that ties back to when Zeke was playing baseball, when he was throwing the rocks at the soldiers. He's like, you're not Grisha Yeager. You've got to start having a little fun. Like that, he was getting more like his father in that moment, thinking about the sins of Eldia and everything in the cycle perpetuating. He's like, no. He's like, we're beyond that. We're beyond the cycle. He's like, you should have just fun with this while we're working towards our goal. Oh my God. And then Kassavar says, I looked for my dead son in you. I ran from my sins with my Titan powers. He ran from his lie. Mm-hmm. Okay. If only I hadn't been born into this world. Like, these guys are all very big nihilists. They're all like, they don't see the point in living, right? And then Zeke's like, I'll inherit the Beast Titan. Not for Marley, but to retake the Founding Titan and save the world. Okay. I'll free the world from the terror of the Titans. And free all Eldians from suffering. Whew. So, in their minds, that they're going to free the world from the Titans. Okay. Free the world from the Titans and save the world. Save the world. And saving the world and saving Eldia is destroying Eldia. That's essentially what we're doing. We're going to kill all the Eldians. We're going to wipe all the Eldians out. Gently and peacefully, of course. We're going to do a peaceful sterilization, and they'll just calmly die out like it's nothing. God. And so then we cut to the barbed wire and everything. This is something I haven't told Marley. Okay, and so then Kassavar says, I haven't told Marley, a way to break the vow renouncing war. And then we see that Zeke's gotten a little bit older, and Kassavar, and I like that Kassavar's in the shadows and Zeke's in the sunlight, and they're in impasse, they're like on the corners. A way to break the vow renouncing war. As luck would have it, it's only possible because it's you. As luck would have it, right? So Zeke has told him, so they know, so somehow Kassavar knows that Zeke's royalty. Okay, he's royal blood. It's only possible because it's you. Zeke is the sole salvation, right? Zeke is he's the sole salvation of this plan. If they don't have Zeke, the plan does not work. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whew. If a Titan with royal blood comes in contact with the Founding Titan, then it's possible to draw out its power. However, the power isn't yours to use. That right lies with the Founding Titan. Okay, so if Zeke and Eren get together, because Zeke has royal blood, they can use the Founding Titan power, right? But Eren is going to be the one to use it, not Zeke. Eren is going to be the one to use it, not Zeke. Yeah. He's like, you are just the key to the lock. Okay. So yeah, so Eren's power is locked up in the Founding Titan. He can't unlock it, but Zeke could unlock it for him, right? Okay. And Zeke looks so much older there. Okay. The Founding Titan needs to be someone you trust. And this is the crazy part. The owl told Grisha the same thing. The owl told Grisha that the Attack Titan needs to be inherited by someone you trust. Oh my God. It's just the parallels. And then we go to Cassava being on the stone, like what Historian then was. Said someone who understands our euthanization plan. And then he's like, I know you'll find that someone. And he just looks happy to finally die. And then I like that everybody's just like clapping as Zeke inherits the Titan. I'll always be watching over you, Zeke. And he doesn't look happy that he's inherited it, right? Oh my gosh, I want to get a picture of that. Yep. Okay. Yeah, and Zeke's ripped. Like, it just took some time, right? And he has the glasses. He took the glasses. And he's like, I'll find that someone, father. And he calls Cassava his dad. Damn. And that's when they get picked up. So Reiner and Bertolt got picked up along the wall. He got picked up along the wall back from Shiganshina. Okay. So they picked him up after Scream, the incident of Scream, right? Before they went back to Shiganshina. So this is because Bertolt didn't make back the second time. And Reiner's like, yes, Eren possesses the Founding Titan. And he's like, Eren Yeager, huh? And in the basement of his house in Shiganshina, there's some sort of vital information. So Reiner gave them the idea to go back to Shiganshina because he's like, oh, wait, they've been talking about this basement. And there's something that's vital in Shiganshina in the basement that we need to know about. And Eren's going to go back there. Okay. And then Zeke's like, did you hear Eren say anything about his father? And then that's when Bertolt says, I believe his father's missing and used to be a doctor. And then Zeke's like, oh my God, it's him. And then, yeah, he puts the glass down. He's like, unbelievable. That father was alive. He didn't die up on the wall. Yeah. Oh my God. And then, yeah, it's almost like he reverts back to his childhood. And Zeke's like, Eren, we're victims. You've been brainwashed by him. But this is the crazy thing about it all. He thinks that Eren, that's why he wanted to go save Eren. He thinks Eren has been brainwashed by Zeke, right? By Grisha. He thought that Eren had been brainwashed by Grisha exactly like he had. But the problem is, the thing of it is that Eren hadn't been. Eren had a nice childhood, a decent childhood. Eren had a good childhood. Grisha wasn't the same the second time around. He learned from his mistakes. And then up at the end of it, but then we're going to tie back to that. He seemingly learned from his mistakes with Eren, but Eren at the end of this doesn't think so. So, God. And that's why he tells Eren when he finds him, and then we see him on peak, he's like, someday I'll come and rescue you. Oh my God. And that's when he finds Eren at the hospital. He says, you're starting to resemble father a bit. Oh my God. And that's when he meets with him outside the hospital. So Eren had been undercover to meet up with Zeke about this plan. Okay. We're flipping this over. Oh my God. Okay. So things are starting to make sense bit by bit, right? Things are starting to make sense bit by bit. So up here, so I'm going to put Eren up here, right? Eren up here. And so Eren, at some point, we think 10 months ago, right? Around 10 months ago, he went to Marley on his own. All right. After Yelena told him that Zeke wanted to meet with him about the plan, right? Yelena just said to light a fire under the administration, but she lit the fuse, technically, about going back. And Eren met with Zeke, all right? That was the big thing. He met with Zeke about the plan and what they would do. Okay. And so Eren and him meeting in this moment. He says, first of all, thanks for coming here to talk with me. So he just came to talk. My stance is what Yelena told you. So, yeah. So Yelena confirmed. So Yelena talked about his stance. Zeke's stance about all of it. And told Eren about everything. Okay? My stance is exactly what Yelena told you. Do you support the Eldian euthanization plan? Okay, so we have the Eldian euthanization plan. The EEP, if you will. Right? God. All right. So he's like, do you support it? And Eren's like, 4 years ago, some of my dad's memories opened up to me. Okay. Some of them. Memories of when he slaughtered the Wall's royal family. So that was that moment when he touched Historia. So Eren goes back to the moment that he touched Historia in the courtroom, or when they're having the ceremony at Erwin's funeral, and he touched Historia, and he saw Grisha killing the royal family, her siblings. Okay, when he slaughtered the Wall's royal family. He crushed their little kids and smeared them like bugs. And it shows him holding, and it's almost like holding a baseball, right? It's like holding like them in their hand. He crushed their little kids and smeared them like bugs. Mm-hmm. And I felt it too. I felt what that felt like. Okay, so he felt that. He felt him killing them. Okay. Gonna bring this back up in a minute. All right. If those kids lived, the founding family would retake, royal family would retake the founding Titan. Bound by the vow renouncing war, humanity and the Walls would be doomed. Okay, so basically he says if Grisha hadn't killed them, then the royal family would have taken the founding Titan and humanity would have been doomed. Okay. Humanity in the Walls would have been doomed. Okay. And so then those kids dying is what let us live. So basically by Grisha, so killing the kids let Eren live. Okay. All right. And so then Zeke says, so I see. So you believe that father was right. And Eren says, no, he was wrong. And Zeke is surprised by that. And I, the son that he raised, was wrong too. So Eren thinks that Grisha was wrong. And that I was wrong too. Okay. Huh. And he just seems so dead as he's saying this. He just seems so dead inside, Eren does. Right? And I was wrong too. If Eldians hadn't been born, this city, these people wouldn't have had to die in this. These people wouldn't have had to die in this plan of ours. So basically, Eren is saying that if we didn't exist, then the people wouldn't die in this plan. Okay. All right. Following you. I'm following you. There's no greater salvation than never being born in this world. That is a bleak outlook on life. So, Eren's words, there's no greater salvation than never being born. Yikes. Okay. It's exactly what Zeke wants to hear. He's like, I'll do it. I'll put an end to 2,000 years of Titan domination. All right. And he says, I'll do it. I'll put an end with it. Until then, I keep moving forward. So Eren doesn't say, I agree to the euthanization plan. I want to point that out. Eren says that he will end 2,000 years of Titan domination. Okay? That's what he says. And he says, until then, I move forward. Because that's the attack Titan, right? So he doesn't say he'll... Right? Let me finish this. Okay. Right, brother? And Zeke, starts to tear up. He says, yeah, you're right. Let's do it. Oh, my God. He's like, I wish I could shake your hand, but it's best that we don't make contact just yet. Just in case something happens, right? We don't know what's going to happen when we make contact, right? Okay. So, instead, take this. And it's the baseball. Eren, we're going to save everyone. Oh my God. Okay, our soul salvation. Oh my God. And then we cut back to Zeke in the wagon. Is Eldia's euthanization. And Levi's like, what are you talking about, euthanization? What are you talking about, genocide? What's happening? What are we doing? He says, you're about to find yourself in a Titan's mouth. What is going on? And was there something about that tree? It's just a bush, I guess. Okay. He says, you're about to find yourself in a Titan's mouth. What we going on? And listening to what sounds like to be digested. Levi, compared to how you stole the lives of our comrades, it sounds like a pleasant way to die. And he's like, I didn't steal. I saved lives. The lives of the children they would bear. God. And Levi's like, excuse me? I like that Levi's like, wait a minute. What? What we spouting off this nonsense about? Huh? He's like, from this cruel world. So yeah, so this cruel world. We bring that up again. This cruel world. And in Zeke's mind, he's saving people. Those people dying, they would have had kids. Those kids would have suffered. I saved them all from existing. Yep. And then he's like, looks like your legs are going back. Okay, so I want to go back and see that real quick. Okay, so he doesn't have feet yet. He says, looks like your legs are going back. Uh-huh. Isn't that right? Mr. Cassava, I hope you're watching. And so he breaks the thing. And Levi's like, well, shit, he broke the thing. Oh my God. And it's just like, it's all in slow motion. And Levi's like, well, shit. And then I'm trying to see if I can see that when it blows up. And yeah, it's right. God. Okay, so we see Levi like get thrown away. And the damn horse is on fire. What the hell? What is happening? What? Why? Oh my God. So... I don't like the euthanization plan. Not a fan. Not a big fan of it all. So the plan is, if I'm getting this... So it seems like we have two different plans, right? We have two different plans happening at the same time, okay? We have what we've told Parody and what is the actual plan. So here's the actual plan, okay? And here is what Parody thinks is happening. Okay. So, and then I'm going to put down here that there is Eren's possible third plan. Because I want to talk about this. Eren didn't say he was on board with the euthanization. He looks pretty... Eren's just looked dead and lifeless. So I'm hoping that Eren is not on board with this euthanization plan. I hope that this is, again, an act. And that Eren is trying to use Zeke to do something. But I don't know. I don't know what else. Okay, so we're going to break this down. What I think... There's the three plans here, okay? So Parody thinks, according to what Zeke outlined for Parody, right, that Zeke and Eren would activate the rumbling. We put it in quotation marks for here. They'd activate the rumbling and wipe out, and I'm just going to put enemies because it could account for Marley, could account for the world, whatever. And then Hizuru would help build defense, right? Okay. And then would help build the defense, and then the Founding Titan and Beast Titan would just pass down from generations to generations. Now, again, this on the surface sounds like it's just going to perpetuate the cycle, right? The cycle of violence. Because again, you're still intimidating the world. You're still making enemies. You're still killing people. It's just causing all this violence. Sure. Okay. Sure thing. All right. But then you have Zeke's actual plan, which is for him and Eren, okay? Eren and Zeke to tap in to the powers of the Founding Titan, all right, and change the biology of Eldians to where they can't have kids anymore, no more kids, and then in 100 years, the Titans will die out. All right? And that'll be the end of it. Eldia will just cease to exist, all right? And basically, Eldia dies. Eldia is wiped off the map. No more Eldians. And then the rest of the world will just carry on and do what it does. That's the plan, right? So, both of these plans suck. I don't like either of these plans for different reasons. You can argue that, yeah, this, sure, from a logistical standpoint, that is the least, it seems like the least violent plan, right? You think that's the least violent plan on the surface, right? Because you're like, oh, well, we don't activate the rumbling with this. We don't wipe out the world. We don't pass down the Titan powers. We don't continue the cycle of violence. We're just going to destroy the cycle. We're just going to destroy the wheel. It's totally fine. It's cool. We're just going to destroy the wheel, and we're basically going to take the spokes off the wheel and stuff, and in about 100 years, it's going to run its course, and everybody will just die out, and it's fine. And then the rest of the world will carry on like it's nothing. I mean, it doesn't stop the cycle of violence, because like Erwin said, conflict is still going to exist as long as there's humanity. So there are some problems with this eugenics plan, with this euthanization plan. One, if by changing the biology of the Eldians and limiting them from having any kids, they're still going to be exposed to violence from Marley and them, because Marley's not going to care if they can't have kids anymore. They're still going to be like, you slaughtered all of our people. We're still going to kill you. So that doesn't, the ones that are left alive that can't have kids, they're still going to suffer for 100 years, right? Or they're just all going to get wiped out because the world's going to be like, well, let's just get rid of them now. And it's taking away their freedom, right? In a sense, because, well, then what's the point? It's a very grim outlook when you're like, we just don't deserve to live. Being born is such a burden. Why do we even exist? Let's just not, what if we just didn't exist? It's like such a dour, heartbreaking, tragic, like, outlook on life that you're like, there's just no point in living. What's the point? right? It's awful. You know. Because it's like, what if a family, what if they wanted to have a kid? What if they wanted to have a family? What if they wanted to bring life into this world? You're denying them that. You're taking away their freedom, their choice, their free will. And you're just dooming an entire race of people to die within 100 years, and you're framing it as salvation. Is that salvation? I don't agree with that, honestly. I mean, I think that it's overlooking, again, in 100 years, it takes time, but we saw with Niccolo and Sasha that there was love there, that there was camaraderie, that there could be peace. And with this, it's like, no, that's not going to happen. We don't just wipe everybody out. And I know why Zeke's coming at it from the angle that Zeke is coming from it, because Zeke's whole childhood has fostered Zeke's childhood, his upbringing, his background, everything has led Zeke to this conclusion. And Kasaver, I want to call him Kasaver, his viewpoint too, like that's all influenced Zeke to where Zeke does believe this is the best option. Sure. But I'm like, Eren, your parents loved you. Bystander, your mother said that that you were special because you were born. This is basically spitting on Carla's whole speech to Keith back in episode 11. This is saying like, no, Carla, you were wrong. Eren's just going to suffer and he should never have been born. Your whole spiel about having children and special things, nah, that's stupid. Like that's basically what it's saying, right? And I find it's just so hard for me to think that Eren, after going through Bystander, after hearing that, after Willie saying, it's on the other side of the board, after Willie saying that he's like, I want to live because I was born into this world, I have that right. Eren saying that he's like, being born was the worst thing that happened to me. I don't want to live anymore. Saying that no greater salvation is to never have been born. What? No wonder Armin and Mikasa would be like, hell no. So there's a part of me that is really hoping that, but I don't know how, there's a part of me that's hoping that maybe Eren is planning to use Zeke to access the Founding Titans' powers. Because here's the thing, okay? They established in this episode that once Zeke, even though Zeke is on board with this plan 100%, Zeke will have no say in the matter once that power is unlocked. It is all going to be Eren. Eren is going to be in charge of that power. Nobody else. Not Zeke. Nobody else. Just Eren can activate it. Okay. Zeke is just unlocking the door for Eren, but Eren gets to walk through it. Okay. So my hope is that Eren is going to access the Founding Titan's power, and maybe, I don't know, if the Founding Titan has the ability to change the biology of people, then why can't the Founding Titan just prevent people from becoming Titans? Why can't that be part of it? Why can't you just get rid of again, it's going back to the Dragon Ball Z with androids. You couldn't change the biology of the androids, but you could take the bomb out, right? You can't, maybe don't change the biology of the Eldians themselves, but take the power of the Titans away. Like, throw away the power of the Titans. If you can do that, why can't you do that? So I don't know. I don't know, maybe take the Titan powers off the equation, right? And that way, they're just normal people. Could that happen? Could that happen? Or maybe make it to where the ones that are Titan shifters now, once they die, the Titan powers die with them. I don't know. But I don't like the idea of euthanizing all of Eldia, because you just basically have doomed an entire race to die with no future. And your excuse is, well, they were just going to suffer anyway, so what was the point? It's like Uri is in his grave going, wait, what? It's like everything that Uri and Mr. Browse and Armin, like everything that they've said, like even down to Erwin. Erwin was like, there's people beyond all the walls. Shouldn't we go discover what's out there? It's like, there's nothing out there, Erwin. We all just need to die. Like, And I know I'm just watching this episode for the first time, and it's not sinking in, and maybe, but I'm not a fan of the nihilistic view that we don't deserve, that we're better off never have been born. right? Because it's just like there's so many narratives where the importance of being born is so foundational, right? It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorite stories. I love It's a Wonderful Life. But the point of It's a Wonderful Life is that the main character, George Bailey, he gets this nihilistic viewpoint because things don't go well. He has all these bad things happen to him, and he feels like he's trapped in a corner, and he's thinking about committing suicide. And so he thinks that it would have been better if he had never been born. He's like, if I had never been born, everything would be better for everyone. And he gets shown what that life would be like. And you see how many people that he influences. And then he realizes, no, my life is precious. It's sacred. And I have influenced people by being in existence. I deserve to be here. And then he realizes that. And then things kind of turn around. And it's a very different story, obviously, than Attack on Titan. But I hate the idea that Eren, according to his conversation with Zeke, he thinks his life is meaningless now. And I'm like, Eren, you... And then that goes back to him telling Mikasa, he's like, I hate her and stuff. I'm like, you've had such an influence on people's lives and you think that there's just no meaning? I'm hoping. A lot of you are fans of Eren's character, and I'm like, this is a really depressing viewpoint. It really is. It's very depressing. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard fighting the cycle of violence. It is. It's hard fighting it, and there's a cycle, and it's very easy to perpetuate that. I'm reading Modao Zushi. It's a donghua. There's a donghua of it. It's a Chinese novel. You should read and watch it. It's great. But in Modao Zushi, there's a point in it that someone said that it's hard to save one person, but it's easy to harm 1,000. There was a line in that novel, and I was like, oh my gosh. And that's so true. It's easy to harm people. It's easy to perpetuate the cycle of violence. It's hard to save people, and it's hard to seek peace out. And you could argue that they think they're saving people with this, and they're saving the rest of the world. Sure, I guess. They're saving the rest of the world from the Eldians, but what about the Eldians? What about their lives? And their argument is, well, their lives are shit, so they won't care if they're dead. But I think Armin would care. I think Hanji cares. I think Gabby and Falco care. I think that what we've seen with Gabby and Falco the last several episodes is that Gabby's worldview has been completely changed around and completely shattered. But I don't think that's made her want to kill herself. I think it's made her want to fight and work towards something. I don't think Falco wants to die. Just because Eren and Zeke have had bad pasts and Zeke's childhood was terrible, and Eren's gone through all this trauma, they're basically, these two men are taking the lives of all of these thousands of people into their hands and saying, well, you're going to die off and you're not going to have any legacy. No kids, nothing. It's just going to end. And I can see why Yelena would be on board with this, because Yelena, her whole people have suffered because of Marley fighting with the Titans. So Yelena's probably on board with this. She's like, oh, sure. Yeah. Zeke's going to die anyway. I love Zeke and he's going to die. So after he's gone, who do I have to live for? Sure, kill all the Eldians. It's fine. It'd be better for the world, right? I get that from Zeke and Eren's perspective, they just see people suffering and they think that this plan is going to be the salvation. It's going to help people, or at least that's what we've been led to believe this episode so far. I believe Zeke's on board with it. Zeke's like, people are suffering. This is the way to save them. But it takes away their freedom. It takes away a lot of free choice. It kind of flies in the face of what Eren said he hates. And in the end, it's just committing a mass execution of an entire race of people, because you think that they're all suffering and that there's no other hope for them. But we've seen through Uri, Browse, and Armin that there is a hope there. It just takes time and you have to work for it. You have to work towards it. You have to create understanding, and it just takes time. And Zeke doesn't have time, and Eren doesn't have time, so this is their quick fix. I'm going to have to sit down and think about this during the recap, I'm sure. And I'm sure a lot of people, maybe people are on board with this. I'm like, I'm just disturbed by this. This plan was disturbing because on paper, it sounds logical. On paper, you're like, yeah, no, there's a cycle of violence for the people of Eldia and they can't escape it, so this is going to get them out of it. But I'm like, it's not, it is, but it isn't, right? And I need to sit down and think about it. And for the recap, think about it more. But we have one more episode left. Oh my God, we have one more episode left. I have the day off Monday. Monday's President's Day, and so I'm recording this ahead, obviously. And so it's President's Day in the U.S. I have Monday off. I may record this on Monday, or I may wait till next week. I may wait until after episode 14 airs and episode 12 airs, but on YouTube and Patreon. But I'm kind of floored by this episode, to be honest. Grisha's character, you see Grisha's character in a much darker light in this episode. Reminds me a lot of Eren. A lot. Zeke, I get where Zeke's coming from now. I get Zeke's character. I'm not on board with this at all, because it's like telling Armin and Mikasa, it's like, you can't have a family. Nope. Sorry. Bye. I don't know. I'm not for like a mass execution of entire population when you have a viable option on the table, right? Not the easy option. This seems like the easy fix, right? This is the easiest, most convenient fix, but it's like seeing Niccolo and Sasha love each other and work through everything and be salvation in each other. It's like, that's worth it, right? That love and, it's like creation of something in the midst of destruction. That's worth it. It's worth the time and the effort. This plan is saying like, no, we tried this for 2,000 years. It never worked. So let's just stop trying. It's just giving up. I feel like this is just giving up on Eldia. Like, let's not even give them any more chances. Let's just, I feel like, I wonder how Erwin would react to this plan. I think he wouldn't like it. Even if Erwin never had kids himself, I think he'd be like, oh, we're just gonna, it's basically, it's like a wall. You're giving the people of Eldia 100 years, live out the rest of your days. It's like what Reiner told Bertolt. It's like, you might as well just live while you can. You have a limited time left in this world. Just enjoy it while you can. That's basically what this plan is. It's like the people of Eldia won't experience any, they may not experience any hardships. But again, we don't know just because you limit their, I guess, but then, okay, I'm trying to figure this out. So maybe Eren and them were trying to do both. Maybe they're going to activate the rumbling, wipe out the rest of the world, and also euthanize Eldia. So in the end, there's just nobody. There's just nobody left. If that's the case, I don't like that at all. No, you're just destroying the wheel. You're burning the forest down. Some of you commented about episode 13 that Eren and Zeke were like, this is burning the forest down. We're burning the forest with all the kids in it. Mr. Browse's whole speech was how we just need to keep the children out of the forest. We just need to work towards a non-violent future, keep the kids out of war, and then things will be peaceful and we can, have a decent life, right? Eren and Zeke are like, keep kids out of the forest. We won't even have kids in the forest. That's what they're saying. They're like, we're just going to burn the whole forest down. There'll be no more forest, no more kids, nothing. It's just non-existence. And I guess if you're on board with that, but I'm not. I'm going to try to keep an objective opinion, though, because we still have one episode left of this. I think something is up with Eren. I could be wrong, but I just feel like something is still up with Eren, even in this. I feel like something's still up with him. I feel like it, right? Because Eren did that whole thing about Grisha killing the kids, but then Eren didn't have any he talks about how it was disturbing him killing the kids, but then he killed all those people during the internment zone. And I guess, did he just not care that he killed all those innocent civilians? Because he's like, well, we're going to kill him anyway, so what's the harm in them dying now? That's problematic to me. I'm going to try to keep an open mind, though. I'm going to try to keep an open mind throughout all of this going forward. I have my personal opinion about this, as I've just told you all, but going forward, I'm going to try to keep a neutral opinion, because as we found out this season, every episode we find something new and it kind of challenges our worldview. And there's bits we get a lot in this episode, a lot of exposition, and we get more into the Titans and the founding Titan and everything, but there's still gaps. There's still pieces that are missing. And we got a lot of the puzzle in this episode, but there's still parts that aren't explained. And so I'm like, okay, I feel like there's still parts missing and we don't know that yet. So yeah. Okay. And I just feel like Eren going to meet Zeke and all this and just jumping aboard the plan to euthanize Eldia and everything. I feel like Eren has an alternate plan. We just don't know what that is yet. But we'll find out maybe. We'll definitely find out in part 2, but I don't think we'll find out in part 1. But I'm so curious, y'all. I'm very curious indeed. So, I don't know. We'll see. So, again, I'm going to try to stay neutral. I'm going to try to keep an open mind. This episode was very eye-opening. I'm worried about Levi because he was right in the middle of that blast and was defenseless. I'm worried about him. I don't know what Zeke's whole plan is with all of this. But yeah. Holy crap. We know the plan now. What a plan it is. So, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please don't spoil me. I'm sure the thing about all these plans is that I can see people being on board with all of these plans. It's fine. I'm a Browsist. I'm in Camp Uri, Browse, and Armin, where I'm like, we can work this out, right? I'm still in that camp, but that's my own personal bias. I won't judge anybody for their opinions either. At this point, Isiam was presenting all these different ideas, so I'm going to try to keep an open mind, especially for this next episode and going into the recap, and we'll talk about it more there, and just map things out. And then go into part 2. So, in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah! I'll be back next week with episode 16 of Attack on Titan, and then the recap, review, and RIP before part 2. See you then, guys! Bye!